Today we're going to explore patterns around pain. So we're going to look at a couple of different paradigms. The first is breath. So that's one pattern that ties in with pain. The second is growth, which is another similar pattern. And the third is a set of quadrants where we have distance. So let's see how we break this up. So on the one hand, we have distance, we have toxicity, we have dissociation, we have pain. So we could say this is an exhale. And then we have an inhale, we have integration, we have association, we have touch, we have proximity, we have comfort, we have ease, we have an inhale. Right? So that's one of these cycles. And on the other hand, the distinction that's important is intelligence. Intelligence, grace, evolution, or stupidity, dysfunction, failure, and devolution. So we have the cycle of breath, and then the question is, where is it aiming? Is it aiming up or down? Meaning, where do we land after the process? Now, another way of looking at this is as a smelting phenomena. So you have this intricate engine component, right? Let's say it's a gearbox for an old Volkswagen bus. And it's in an intricate form, but it's not as refined, it's not as efficient, it's not as quiet, for example, as a 30-year-old or 30-year newer, more modern Volkswagen gearbox, right? So you have this form, and in order to get that metal, in order to recycle that metal into this new form, it first has to be liquefied, right? So you have to liquefy the metal. Now, at this point in the liquefaction process, the alloy, the nature, the ingredients in the metal can also be adjusted, right? Because evolution happens on multiple levels. The structure of the materials is improving. The nature, so you have the structure of the materials, you have the materials that are used, you have the design of the material, and then you have the synergy, right? The energy that goes in, the energy that goes out. All of those things can be iterated. You can use a better alloy. You can have less waste, add some cooling bars and structural lines rather than a big mass to actually cool it more and have it be stronger but lighter. So you've got the functionality of each piece improving. And then you've got the mechanism, and the design improving as well. That's if it's evolving. And now you have the new part, right? The new piece that can be put into a newer car for a better experience. So that's evolution, right? And so in order to go from the old shape to the new shape, you have to have a complete liquefaction. You can't take a single bit, like you can't cut out with an angle grinder this bit of this transmission and weld it on here, and it's going to ruin it, right? Because everything has to change in step. It's like a dance troupe, right? You have a group of people dancing in the 30s, and now you want to teach them a new dance step, a new move in the 90s, right? 60 years later. You can't just take one or two of the dancers and have them do that. You can't just interject a few dancers into that group. You've got to pause, let go of the old pattern, adopt the new pattern as a group, and then you get synergy, right? Because it's the midground that is so precarious, right? If you have this vision for a great new jet engine and you've got a propeller, right? But all you do is take a little bit here and a little bit there and change the wing, well, then the old plane crashes. But you didn't get any of the results of the new plane. So there's a complete liquefaction for a major evolutionary change. For a major upgrade, you go back to the drawing board. You look at the latest materials. You look at the latest design. You look at the latest technology for designing things. And out of that, you can emerge, you can develop something that has never existed before, that is 1,000% more efficient, right? A jet engine on a jet is 1,000% more efficient than a prop plane going over the Atlantic, right? So it can be bigger, it can be faster, and it can be cheaper per person than a small plane, right? To fly 6 people across the Atlantic. It's far more expensive than to fly 1,000 people across the Atlantic in a large jet. So it's a whole new paradigm, a whole new game, a whole new design. And the midground is dangerous. If you apply this little bit to try and improve the old design, it fails. You can't just add the rudder of a jet onto a twin-engine propelled plane and get the benefit, right? That rudder is supposed to be, withstanding forces of 700 miles an hour, right, on a large plane. So it just ruins a small plane to try and mingle these different ideas. And so one of the big crises in evolution is this phenomena of all or nothing for the big iterations, right? If we could rechange the attitude of everyone involved, if we could reallocate the protocol for spending money for everyone involved, if we could change the belief system of everyone involved, if we could change the value hierarchy, everyone has the same values, they just prioritize them differently. Everyone wants to be honest, or at least wants other people to be honest. Everyone wants to have fun, but some people value fun more than honesty, and some people value honesty more than fun, right? So some people have an affair when expedient, and other people are faithful, right? Out of that hierarchy of values. Everyone values honesty, everyone values fun, but the way life unfolds is very different based on the priority. Which comes first for you and for you and for you, right? If we could just change the value hierarchy for all involved, If we could just use a new material, if we could just use this radically different design, if we could just make thousands upon thousands of these rather than thousands upon thousands of those, we would have 1,000% improvement. But if we just make one of them, you don't have the efficiency of scale. And so it's more expensive. A better idea that you just do once is less efficient than the idea that you do 10,000, right? 10,000 may be 1,000% more efficient, but 1, 2, 3 may be 1,000% less efficient, right? And the variable is scale. So how do you move from one system to another? And that's a key piece in change, right? If I changed partner, if I changed diet, right? And then we get into chaos, luminous chaos. If I changed partner, if I changed diet, if I changed mission, if I changed daily routine, if I changed the allocation of my money, then a luminous new door, right? A new possibility. But the ego, the I that identifies with the old pattern that says, this is who I am. I don't want to be out of control, so I don't want to enter the unknown. The ego doesn't want to change. The I that identifies, that defines itself with a familiar, a family pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, it doesn't want to shift into this whole new paradigm. It wants to stay with the family, with the familiar, the reality that it can predict. Because then it's got control. It's got control because if you do this 1,000 times, it's not very productive, right? You're just banging one finger into the other. But you can absolutely predict, watch this, I know exactly what's going to happen, right? I can do it again, right? There's tremendous certainty, safety in certainty, in familiarity. It's dumb, but it's predictable. So I'm in control, right? I did that. But now if you ask me to do some new move that might, see, my back is aching. Right down here, it's aching. It's been aching for the last hour. Now, this is not helping my back. Now, there is a move that I don't know that's helping my back, but I'm not doing that, am I? I'm doing this, right? Because, well, maybe I'd make it worse. Maybe I don't know, right? And so we do the familiar over and over and over again because we're in control, because we've got certainty, right? And everyone wants certainty. I can't visualize that. I'm not going to give you any money for something I can't visualize, right? It's out of my control. I don't get it, right? So I'm not going to trust, right? I'm not going to trust my journey into the unknown. I'm not going to trust that, right? Because I can't see it. So I want to stay close, right? Now, when we stay close, we're bound to small iterative changes, right? I know I'm going to take my Honda Civic and I'm going to paint it red. It's going to come out red, right? Just like this one. I want it to look just like this red. See this red here? That's exactly what I want. This car that I'm very familiar with this red, which I'm very familiar with, just change this car to have that color red. And I feel great. I know exactly what's going to happen. What's the price going to be? Good. I now know that, right? I've got certainty about the price, certainty about the old thing. Nothing's going to change. It's just going to be this red. I like it. I'm in control, and it's a small, iterative design change. Right? Just the color, right? And then maybe I'll change the fragrance softener. I don't like that. I like lavender. I don't want pine scents. I want lavender, right? So I'm going to change that. I'm going to change these bolts. These are normal. They don't have much shine on. I want a nice chromed bolts, or this bolt or that. I'm going to do this and change the. And this is iterative improvement. But to create a vertical takeoff machine or a Tesla, an all-electric car, or go from human driving to self-driving, I don't have a lot of experience of that. The car's driving awfully safe there, or I'm driving and I'm fine, right? But somebody else is driving. You slow down. You didn't do that, right? Because I'm out of control, right? I'm out of control, and there was a time for all of us when we were out of control, when we were helpless. It's called infancy, and things didn't always go the way we wanted it. And our body remembered those tense moments, needing something, and no one was there, being overwhelmed, and someone was overwhelming us some more, or screaming because we needed something and being hit and silenced, right? So it didn't go very well when we were out of control. So now I've got control. I can predict everything. I don't want to give up control. So we have these iterative, we have this grid, which is useful, right? With one of two outcomes, because as we go off, as we dissociate, right? Another way of looking at that is imagination, right? If I'm here and I'm imagining being in Fiji, and I'm here, I'm dissociating, because associating would be I'm imagining being here, and I'm here. That's integration, that's integrity. I imagine myself being right here, I'm right here, and I'm feeling about things here, and I'm thinking about things here, and I'm doing things right here, and I'm just going to stay right here. But if I imagine myself in Fiji, then I'm feeling about Fiji, I'm thinking about Fiji, maybe I'm making plans about Fiji, but my body's still here. It's a dissociation. Now, one of two things is going to happen. Either I'm going to pull my thoughts and feelings and plans and money back to right here, or I'm going to move my body to Fiji. Right? One or the other. The exhale, right? The dissociation is going to move back into integration, or we're going to die, right? If I still think I'm in Fiji, but my body is operating here, and I'm saying, yes, I'll have another coconut, but meanwhile, I don't have any coconuts in the fridge, and my body is dying here, you have death, right? So it's a cycle. Dissociation, association, into the future, into the present, right? Right. So that's the breath. Now, at a certain point, it gets uncomfortable. I'm thinking about that. At a certain point, you breathe out, and I want to breathe in, right? I want to get back to normal. I want to, do what I'm familiar with, right? At a certain point, it gets uncomfortable. I don't know what I am, right? And that's called a bad trip, right? Because many psychedelics, let's just talk about some, right? They take us into a place that's different than our family. It's different from what's familiar, right? But if you don't bring that back, right? Because that's the journey. You have a deeper exhale. You see things from 30,000 feet, and you come back. That's the key thing, right? But if you get lost out there, I've lost my bearings. Right? I've gone out there. I don't know how to get back. Right? You know, that's often a bad trip for traumatized people, because every time I've been out of control, bad things have happened. Now I'm out of control, right? So where's the bad thing that's going to happen, right? And when you're in your mind, you can create bad things just by thinking about them, right? So then how do you come back? And then how do you take your body? If you go off traveling and say, oh, I love this country, how do you take some of that back? How do you integrate some of what was out there and bring it back? When you have a beautiful idea for a relationship, for a date, for a new car, when you have a beautiful idea, how do you bring it back into the present and integrate? Particularly when so many of the possibilities require synergy. They require a network effect. They require lots of people to participate in some way. So if we look at pain, one definition of pain is that it is a separation from and longing for. I'm separate from something and I long for it. You know, my finger is separate. I long to have a whole body, but my finger is separate, right? Physical pain. I long for a sense of integrity, of integration of my physical senses. My nerves long for that as well. And when my finger is severed and separated, when my arm is extended too much and I'm being pulled by this crane, you know, and I'm trying to separate my arm from my body, right? Separation from it to an uncomfortable degree. Now, you know, so you have the full range. You have yoga, right? You're separating things, but to a comfortable degree, right? You're going stretching, and then you come back, right? So you've got dissociation, you've got integration with the breath, right? Same with the breath, right? Take a full cycle, right? I feel alive, because that's evolution. Dissociation, association. Exhale followed by an inhale. And you can take it out to a certain point and grow and stretch. But beyond that point, it gets more and more uncomfortable, then more and more painful, and then death. Right? If any part of the cycle becomes too extreme, it becomes toxic. Too little salt, you die. Too much salt, you die. Too little water, you die. Too much water, you die, right? Too little electrical activity in the brain, you die. Too much electrical activity in the brain, you die. It's a cycle, right? And so attunement, which is a core element of love, is actually understanding the cycles that you're encountering and attuning, right? I'm not going to put 50,000 volts in your brain. It looks like your brain is focusing on microvolts. So if I want to relate to your brain, let me do it in microvolts, in a range that's kind of in there. And then let's find one that creates well-being, that creates flow, that creates life. Because flow is what occurs in a cycle. Time flows in the cycle of the inhale and the exhale. You've got a cycle, you have flow, right? If you block the cycle at any point, I don't want to breathe. I don't want to breathe. I don't want to feel it. I don't want to think that thought. I don't want to feel it, and I don't want to move. Now you have no flow. You've interrupted the cycle. I don't want to be present because it's overwhelming, because I can't digest it. It breaks my eye. The I, when it's present, its pattern, its sense of self breaks. Right? There's a break in the identity. I was that way, and now I'm this way, and I'm traumatized. I'm in shock. The pattern has changed too quickly in too many levels. So we have the moving out, the dissociation, and then we have the integration, either the moving back or the moving forward, right? So if I move out and have a goal, and then I move the reality to that goal, now we've got evolution. We've got a cycle forward. Now, if I move out and have a goal, and then say, nah, that's not going to work, and then return to where now my picture is here, you have stasis, right? I went out, it's too much. It's too big of a cycle, right? It's too much. You know, it costs too much. Costs too much. It's too much stress. It's too. I can't jump that chasm from here to there. So I'm going to bring it back, right? Right. Bring it back. So now you have stasis, right? You have an exploration, or you have an integration, right? I'm not going to give there, and you can start a smaller breath. Maybe you go out to here and say, oh yeah, like I'm not going to move house, but I will go out to the park, right? And so imagine going out to the park. I go out to the park. Now I'm moving back, right, to here, but now we're integrated at the park. That's comfortable. Moving house, that's difficult. Going to the park, that's comfortable, right? But there's movement, there's flow. And the question as we move, as we flow, is are we moving towards something that's more complex? Going back to that VW part, right? We've liquefied it, but okay, so where is it going to crystallize? What's it going to become? How are you going to get that molten metal into the new transmission that's 60 years more evolved? Well, you need molds, you need a process, you need an assembly, right? But I don't have that. I've just liquefied it. I'm moved, right? Well, then it will cool down, right? The liquefaction is partly the dissociation. It will cool down. The question is, into what form? What will it form? Right? If you don't have competency, it will often go to nothing, right? Like, what if you took an old VW transmission that's working in an old VW? You liquefy it, and the metal just hardens in the pot because you don't have the molds ready to pour it into, and so there's nothing there. Well, now you've just got a pile of metal. It's worth less, so it's devolved from a functioning transmission up here to a pile of scrap down here, right? So you've gone down. And this is, I think, really important to understand that anytime you liquefy something, anytime you dissociate and then move towards it, you can end up better off or worse on the intelligence continuum, on the well-being continuum, on the grace continuum, on the evolutionary continuum. Vulnerability is another form of liquefaction, right? If you become vulnerable to a highly ethical, highly competent person, you will likely crystallize into a more evolved identity as you liquefy. If you liquefy and then give yourself to an impatient, incompetent person, you will harden into shame or into nothing, right? Get this out of my way. I don't want that hot metal around here, right? I'm busy. I'm watching TV, right? So now you harden into being an annoyance. The identity is I am someone who annoys someone, right? I was someone who was giving myself in this liquid state. But you see, that's only intelligent. That's only self-loving if you give your liquidity to someone who is more competent, more intelligent, has more complex ideas than you do. Then you grow, then you evolve. So pain is the separation from and longing for something, right? And this propels evolution, development. It propels growth. If you move your reality towards what you long for, the pain is healed. But in the process of healing the pain, you are now more evolved. If you long for something, cocaine, opium, right? If you long for something and you move your reality to higher and higher doses of cocaine and opium, then the complexity of your life falls apart. You don't go to work. You don't make an income. You don't associate as much with what's going on around you, and you shrink. So I longed for something, and as I fulfilled it, I wanted that ice cream, right? And as I fulfilled that again and again, my body becomes more obese, more inflamed. I'm a little bit more foggy. I don't have as much energy as I would have eating protein. And so I had the longing, I fulfilled it, and I'm diminished. So I've devolved, right, in that process, right? So pain is, in some ways, connected. If we look at the connections between pain, we can see there's a connection between desire and pain. If I don't desire something and I don't have it, there's no pain. If I deeply, deeply desire something and I'm permanently separate from it, there's a high amount of pain. If I value something and it is violated, like if I value my infant and somebody traumatizes my infant, and I value that infant, I value the innocence of that infant, the trust of that infant, and it has been taken violently by someone that doesn't attune, well, then I'm in pain, right? Because I long for this, but I get this, and I can't restore the gap. It's a horrible, helpless feeling. What I deeply long for and what I have. Now, that sense of helpless pain often leads to destruction, right? So this is the downward spiral. Helpless pain leads to destruction. Meaning if you are in pain because what you value most is being violated, and you have no hope of protecting, you will turn away, you will dissociate from what you value. And you may turn the powerlessness into power by trying to destroy what you value. You've probably seen situations where someone gives their heart in a certain symbolic way to another person, what they value most. I see something beautiful, good, and true in you. I'm projecting my deityship onto a person. But that person is a false god, a false goddess. What I mean by that is we're projecting more intelligence, more grace, more beauty, truth, and goodness onto them than they are capable of embodying, right? So when you project God and goddess onto a con artist, for example, their job is to make sure that you see them ahead of you, because that's all God and goddess are, is the ideal, the embodiment, your embodiment of the ideal, right? For a playboy, a god is someone who's sleeping with all the best women. Easily. They're lining up, right? And so if your god is pleasure and importance and outside validation, then being a playboy and having that goal of endless validation, endless pleasure, ease, wealth, right? Feeling important. All these people want to have sex with me, right? So I feel great when I think of that, right? That because I feel so unimportant, right? The deityship, the god, the archetypal expression of beauty, truth, and goodness is medicine for its opposite, right? So if I feel powerless and worthless, then God or goddess for me is going to be the ultimate fantasy of worth and power. Now, if I feel ugly and unattractive, the ultimate God will be to be amazingly attractive, right? And so we can find the wound in what we worship. We worship the medicine to our wound. And that becomes our deity, right? And so for the person that feels small and incompetent and lacks confidence, etc., and is just stuck going round and round that feeling, well, certainly they look at someone who's confident, who feels big, who's attractive, who's having all these expressions that, like, if I had that, then I would feel better. So that becomes your God, that person. I want to be like you, right? You're my God, right? But someone who's that way in the extreme is more likely to be narcissistic, for example. So if you give your liquidity, I want to be like you, whatever it takes, I worship you, right? But amidst all of that hedonic pleasure is a fair amount of self-centered narcissism. Well, then a narcissist that's self-absorbed and focused on pleasure uses people to get more pleasure. So you're giving your essence, your, like, I want to be like you, show me how to be like you, your veneration to someone who's thinking about themselves, right? And so they may say, yeah, get out of my way, you're ruining my game. Or, oh, I could use you as my wingman, but I don't really care about you, right? Well, as you try to become more like someone who doesn't care about you, right, that backfires, right? You realize, oh, I'm worshiping a false god, a false goddess. Right? You're the one, the most beautiful thing. You're my sense of the goddess. But she's an ice queen, right? She's a narcissistic bitch. Oh, you're so beautiful. But she has contempt for anyone who finds her attractive. So you worship the person who has the most contempt for you. Well, it's a false god, right? You realize, I want to become more like someone who doesn't respect me. Well, that rebounds. And so you realize, I'm worshiping a false god. Aha, what's the true God, right? All gods, all goddesses are false in the end. Whatever you worship is false in the end. But it can take you along the journey because you worship the false god and you get the rebound. And then you learn that's not the right God, right? The true God is the whole. The true God is the synergy. The true God is life. The uninterrupted ecology. The true God transcends language. And so everything that you can put into words at best is medicinal, right? Hopefully it takes you a little closer to integration a little closer to sustainable well-being before you discard that dog, just like a teacher, right? This is my teacher, but then you realize my teacher has all kinds of blind spots and my teacher has all kinds of flaws. This will be my partner, save me, right? And you realize my partner can't drive very well. They can't handle an argument. They have to run off every time they encounter this feeling. Realize that's perfection? Of course not. No thing, no shape is perfect, right? Because if you can put it into words, it's a dumbed down model at best of reality. Because words are a dumbed down, simplistic model of reality. If you can put it into more beautiful words and it can hold that, well then, you're getting somewhere. If you look to a person, you're going to be the end-all. You look to a deity, a religion, this. It can only take you so far before you need to grow up. A child is dependent on something out there. The adolescent wakes up and realizes it's full of shit. And the adult has to ultimately own that it's up to me. There is no out there that's going to do it. No channeled entity, no perfect this, no perfect that. It's the adult that has to say, okay, what does beauty, truth, and goodness look to me right now, knowing that I'm wrong? We'll make lots of mistakes along the way. But in the pursuit, I will, hopefully, if I'm wise, become more, move towards complexity, move towards grace. But if I'm not, right, then, I'll go into more pain, and that'll wake me up, right? I haven't figured it out yet. I'm going deeper and deeper into pain. So, we'll leave it here, but this is an evolving conversation it's an evolving conversation, wrestling with these ideas. How do these cycles intersect? How can we be more aware of them? What to do with them to create more beauty, more truth, more goodness, to move closer to sustainable well-being?